All
Yep.
right, guys, another episode, Gospel of Fire. I'm here with, man, I don't even know how to announce you, Ricardo. You are a champion of jiu-jitsu and martial arts and everything. Like, you travel the world, you've done everything, successful with your schools, now a great coach, a father. Man, Ricardo Almeida, how are you?
Very good, man. So excited to be here. We've shared so many experiences, and we've had been around each other. Like, your teacher Amal is like a great friend, someone I hold dearly, and I've watched you come up and always hearing your teacher talk about you, and to see the things you're doing now, and watched you on the UFC, and watch you coaching. It's incredible to watch. It's amazing.
It's a fun ride, right? It's a fun ride episode. We were just saying, like, right, we've shared so many of the same experiences. You were like a generation ahead of me. You were like I don't know, I talked to Jamal the other day, a couple weeks ago, Patterson, and like, you were one of the ones that he was watching and that I was watching coming up, because he and I were the same generation of like jiu-jitsu fighters coming up through the day,
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the power of this whole thing with jiu-jitsu, and us being so lucky to have the teachers that we have had. We're just a link in the chain, man. And I'm as grateful as I am for my teachers. Initially Carlinhos and Renzo, of course, and I'm excited for the guys that I've grown up with, like Kamal. Like, I met Kamal in Brazil, and when I was like a little kid, and then like my training partners, or my peers, students like you and Finney and some of the boys out there in Colorado.
Yeah, man. Tell me what it was like for you. What was your experience like coming up you started as young, right? Like, how old were you when you started?
I mean, I started young, but it's kind of late, like, I started when I was 15.
Right, that's late in Brazil, and that I guess that's normal now.
I mean, the new generation of guys, like, if you watch, like the Mendes brothers, like there's pictures of them competing as like yellow belts, like some
Right.
of the guys now started like so much younger than I did, But yeah, coming up in Brazil was great, man. I was so lucky, like, right place at the right time. I was lucky that, my dad wanted me and my brother to train martial arts. I actually started with karate first, and then my friend that I went to high school with, Marcelo, he trained at Gracie Barra, and Gracie Barra was like walking distance from my house. So every day I'll come home, do my homework, maybe go surfing a little bit, and come home, get changed into my gi, and walk to Gracie Barra. And I walked in, and there's Carlos Gracie Jr., there is Renzo Gracie, Gordo, Soneca, like all the were brown belts, like Roleta, Soca, Draculino, all these guys were purple belts, and it was just like a small little group that, man, like, now almost everyone is somewhere in the world with, like, a huge influence on what jiu-jitsu has become, for sure.
So I mean, you walked into the school on an everyday, and which was normal for you, and for all of the jiu-jitsu people now, you just had like you just named a who's who of just like who is hanging out in the school for you. Like, man, that's amazing. That, like, what such a connection to the roots of Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, man. And it's I think that, again, right place at the right time. Like, when I think back at the time that I started, like, Gracie Barra had this huge competition with like Carlson Gracie Academy, and
Right.
like, growing up in Rio at that time, there was maybe like 4 major schools. There was Gracie Barra, there was the Carlson Gracie School, there was Royal Gracie School. There was a little bit smaller, but he always had like, incredible guys. And then there was Master, which was Jacare School. That's
Okay.
where Fabio Gurgel and Alliance and then all these guys came from. And Carlson Gracie was from Murilo Bustamante and Valide and Liborio, and like all these guys came from, But because Gracie Barra was like a newer school compared to those schools, like, we had like no black belts, man. Like, when I started training, Master Carlos was the only black belt, and then besides Master Carlos, Hansel was another black belt when I started training. And Hansel was already like running his own school, and we would never see him in the night classes because he was also teaching. But sometimes
Where was Renzo's school?
Hansel school is Ipanema. Like, it's like from Barra, you guys have been to Brazil, Rio is like cut up in sections by the mountains, you know, and you typically driving through tunnels or like around mountains. So Gracie Barra is maybe like 2 tunnels from Ipanema, and then like maybe a couple of towns from Copacabana, where Carlson Gracie's school was. And Tijuca is where, or Humaitá is where Royler Gracie's school was, which is also, you know, a couple of neighborhoods apart. So you had this like epicenter of jiu-jitsu, probably no more than, you know, maybe like 20 miles apart, like all these schools. But, you know,
so
Rio's
you
a
were,
very big city.
Yeah. So you were in Baja, correct?
Yeah.
That's where you lived. So who was your main teacher? Who was mostly teaching you at the time? Was it Seneca? Because I know Seneca used to teach a lot of the kids, but you were like in that weird age 15 where like you're not quite a kid, but you're not quite an adult. Like, so who was really teaching you the most?
Yeah, I never took the kids classes, man. You know, like I was 15, so I was too big for the kids classes. Like originally at Gracie Bar, I had like a mat upstairs for the adults and a mat downstairs for the kids. So my original teacher was Carlos Gracie Jr., you know, my first class, he was teaching. And as the years progressed and, you know, Gordo got his black belt and Soneca got his black belt, like a lot of times they will run classes. Velho, Eduardo Lima, you know, he started teaching some of the basic classes. I took a lot of classes from Velho. I mean, I learned so much. Like, I think the guys that I learned so much were, for sure, Gordo and Soneca, because, you know, they were like just sort of like technical leaders within the group. You know, they were more experienced. They were already like, you know, black belts. Then, you know, Soca, Draculino later on moved, but I remember, you know, learning from Draculino too, but definitely Soca and, you know, Marcio Feitosa too. Feitosa was like, man, he was like, I hated him so much because he was like 2 weight classes below me. And when I started training, he already had like 4 years of training, but we became blue belts together. And he was a green belt. And I had just started jiu-jitsu and we became blue belts together. I mean, I remember winning nationals as a blue belt in the under 18, like the 17 group. I won the nationals, like my first year competing, and Marcio won the nationals. We were both blue belts there. I would come home and train at GBE, and I might as well be a white belt. Like, he was just killing me. Like, it took me so many years. It wasn't probably until I was a black belt that I was able to, and so much bigger than Marcio, you know, to bridge the gap and be able to have a training session where like I'm like, all right, like I could go technique for technique with this guy, you know.
Well, you're in the game.
Yeah, it was just like, man, it was so hard. Like I hated him so much. Like, you know, I hated to train with him because he made me feel so inadequate as far as my technique.
Dude, we had a guy like that, man. Unfortunately, he's passed now, but he was. We call, you know, when I started, we had all these Daves. We had like 30 Daves. So we had like Big Dave, Anakin Dave, Weightlifter Dave. Like, so this was this guy named Big Dave. And he was like the highest ranking Kung Fu master in between the Mississippi River and California. So sometimes sometimes literally, because he did Kung Fu his whole life. Like, we'd be out and people would like walk up to him like in town that like did Kung Fu. And they'd be like, oh, Master Perry. And they would bow to him in a restaurant. And we'd be like, who the fuck? Right? Like, what's going on? You know? And so anyway, he lived a very interesting life. But he had like 6 months on me. And that's it. Like, not much. 6 to 8 months. And bro, I just couldn't understand it. Like, this gap bridging thing that you're talking about. Like, I would train every fucking day, twice a day, like fuck going to college, everything. And he would come in and train for like 2 weeks straight. And then he'd take 2 months off. Dude, it wasn't until purple belt. Years. It took me like, how long does it take to get purple belt? 3 years? It took me 3 years to bridge a 6-month gap.
Yeah, it's crazy. Because he had all the experience from training before. He already knew how to, you know, like your first person you teach is yourself. Like, he already knew how to teach himself, you know, so it's hard to bridge that gap. Same thing with Marcio, man. Like, you know, a couple of years ago, we got together to do a video for like a curriculum for Gracie Barra, and man, like him teaching the basics, I was like, freak, man. Like, you know, you just get this feeling that these guys know something you don't, you know, like, and it takes years to bridge that.
it's crazy what, like, yes, like that is so insane. Like I don't know, like what you're saying, this, like watching Marcio teach the basics. I was watching the Donahar Pins and Escapes DVD the other day, and I was like, God damn, my bridge wrong. Like my UPA. I was like, motherfucker, really? I mean, it's worked pretty well for me. It's like 20 years here, black belt, won a couple things, right? Like,
yeah,
but
man, it's crazy.
The way he's showing it it's a little better than the way I do it. So it's crazy, those little details that, like, through a lot of knowledge and study come with, and especially for you getting back to it. I mean, those are all the legends you learned from, every legend that ever came out of Gracie Barra.
Yeah, man, like the way I kind of look at it, you know, it was like I don't know, man. It's like an escalator, you know, like when the stairs go up, it's, you know what I mean? Like somehow I got lucky to just kind of land on this little escalator, which was Gracie Barra at the time. And, you know, it just kind of sent me upward and forward.
Yeah.
You know, and there was nothing I could do about it. If I, you know, unless I hopped off, I was going up and forward, you know, and some of the people that I have trained with, you know, it's crazy, you know, like even looking back at Marcio and even other kids, man, that used to smash me. Like I like to think that I'm pretty athletic, you know, like, but I was never the most talented, like within that group, like by any means or any stretch. You know, there were so many kids, there was so much greater than me, but I just kind of kept coming. I just kept, you know, like I was competitive. I wanted to do good, and it pushed me to have a type of life that I never imagined at the time. You know, like now people are like, yeah, man, I want to be a jiu-jitsu instructor, and you know, you figure it out and you open a school, you're successful. Like back then, it wasn't like that at all. You know,
What was it like?
Man, like there was no way to have a jiu-jitsu school. You know what I mean? Like Rio's pretty small, so I lived I lived in Baja, so I got my purple belt, and maybe, you know, getting to brown belt was right around the time that I was getting in college. And I was like, man, like, what am I going to do? Like, you know, like, do I go to college? Like, do I keep training jiu-jitsu? And, you know, what am I going to do? Open a school right next to my instructor? You know what I mean? I'm going to open a school like 5 miles down the road, and then everyone's going to open a school 5 miles down the road. You know, like there was nowhere to go. Rio was just too small. And I think that's why jiu-jitsu grew so much. You know, like Rio was just too small for so much talent, you know, and I ended up taking an opportunity and came to the United States to teach with Renzo, you know, at a school he had in Philly actually at the time.
With Craig Kukik, right?
With Craig Kukik, yeah. So I taught there for a little bit. Then later on, Renzo split from Craig and closed the school. And I opened my place in South Jersey. But, you know, to be honest, like back in those days of where we were, it was all about competition, and it wasn't so much about growing jiu-jitsu as it is today, you know. So I think that people who train now, like training is a lot more inclusive, you know, as it should be, you know. Like more, as many people as we could get on the mats, like, is not enough, you know. Like there's so many other things that people do that you don't get the lessons and the benefits, the physical, mental, and even spiritual benefits of just kind of, you know, having someone sit on top of you and squeeze the heck out of your neck, and then you tap and you realize that you're not invincible, but also that there is room for improvement, and you know, there's a clear way for you to get better, and if you just keep coming, you will.
Yeah, people, you know, for me, I think jiu-jitsu is the number one thing that can improve someone's life. Like that's just, you know, my personal belief. It's, you know, I go over it a lot on the podcast. I have rules for my kids, you know, 6 of them, and they're not like, you know, I mean, of course they have to like brush their teeth and shit, right? But like, you know, like the number one rule, and I come back to it all the time on the podcast, is they have to do jiu-jitsu, you know, because I don't think there's a better way to make someone's life amazing, you know. And it's not a guarantee, because nothing's a guarantee, right? To make you a good person, jiu-jitsu is it does so much for the soul, like, and I think spiritually more than almost anything.
Yeah, man, I 100%, and I agree, you know. And I had like a pretty weird experience this last year. I injured my knee surfing in Mexico in August.
Okay.
And I literally my MCL, I didn't need surgery or anything, but you know, I'm 43 now, so I'm a little old. It's taken so long for this thing to heal to the point that I'm like, all right, like I could give it a go training, because I don't want to re-injure this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And man, like I just missed training so much. You know what I mean? Like I just missed like the ability to do something active where you're just sweating, you're drenched, like you're breathing hard, and you know there's like sweat dripping from your eyebrows, but you have no thoughts in your head. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's like there's nothing like jiu-jitsu because it's so reactive to what your opponent's doing. You know, there's such an immense sense of urgency and like a survival aspect that, you know, it becomes like moving meditation, you know. My kids run, and you know they've been running in high school, and you know they're getting pretty good. So sometimes on Sundays I go with runs on them, and man, every step that I take is like a conversation between my mind to like not ever run again, and my and my body to like, all right, you can keep going a little bit. Like I hate every step, but typically when I'm done, like I'm proud of myself, you know, like, and my kids are already at a level that I can't even, I could probably keep up with them on the bike. That's about it, you know?
Right.
But running sucks. Like every step of the way, you're second guessing why you're doing it. Whereas jiu-jitsu, yeah, it's tough. You know, you get submitted, you make mistakes, and your ego suffers a little bit. But that empty mind feeling of like a training session where you're just reacting, man, like I missed that so much. You know, like to the point that it was making me sick. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I understand. And plus, sometimes on that spiritual level, I think like the Jesus story, and I'm not religious, but like of dying and coming back to life. Like there's something to that for the human person. Like we identify with that because we all want to like live forever a little bit, right? There's some of that in all 100%. Of us. And you get to do that with jiu-jitsu. Like you get to die. Like someone chokes you out and boom, you got a tap. You just died. Right. But then you get then it stops, and then you get reborn again, and you get to try it all over again. Right. Like, and you get to, and there's just something to that we as humans, whether you think it's whether you think it's truth, which is amazing if you do, or whether you think it's like a good story, which is fine, do that too. But there's something about that story that millions and billions of people have attached to. You know, and I think part of it is the rebirth thing, and we all want that.
100%.
Jiu-jitsu provides it.
And look at video games. You know, like I remember being a little kid, and the video game consoles started to get more and more lifelike. You know, like you get into like a single person shooter, and you're trying to beat the game, and next thing you know, you're, you know, like you die and then you try again, then you die and you try again. As the game, and you get that aspect from jiu-jitsu in real life. You know, and not only that,
video game.
And not only that, you know, with these games that you're playing against other people, and you feel like you know, like you're better than them, or maybe you're trying to beat this record or that record. Like you do get at that in jiu-jitsu from the community as well. You know what I mean? So it's the ultimate expression of competitiveness, but also the ultimate expression of just, you know, self-improvement, even if you compare it to like some video game that the kids are so addicted to nowadays, you know?
Yeah. And it, I don't think anybody does anything by themselves. I don't believe in the self-made man. I believe that we need people in our lives, and you can't get good at jiu-jitsu by yourself. It is impossible. Like it is totally impossible. And if you look at like the schools today, like look how much better everyone is because of things like the internet and how big jiu-jitsu schools are getting, that there's so many people in there. And maybe everyone's not even close to a world champion, but they do this one thing really, really well that you get to go experience, so that maybe the person trying to be a world champion goes, okay, man, well, that doctor over there plays this one part of the game, and I need to work on that. And I can go do that with him, and then I can do that with her, and bop, bop, bop. And you have to bring all these people into your life that like have this great impact on your life. And there we are. We have like a community of people that we love and care about, and like you and I, right? We're across the country. We barely see each other, right? 100%. But somehow we have this connection where, like you said it, it's like it doesn't take any time to like talk to each other. It's just boom.
Yeah, I haven't seen you in a long time, and you know sometimes we cross paths, you know, in the UFC, you know, sometimes coaching guys, but it's like, man, like, you know, if I see you, it's like, you know, it's like I saw you last week, you know. It's like jiu-jitsu brings people close that way, you know, and there's nothing else like it, you know, like there's no other community like it, just because of people are real, you know, like for the most part, like they're real.
Yeah, and you can go anywhere in the world. Go anywhere in the world, find a jiu-jitsu school. You don't have to be able to speak the language, nothing. And somebody will take care of you, right? Somebody will take care of you. It's the amazingness of jiu-jitsu. It's so amazing. So when you moved to America, were you just competing in jiu-jitsu at the time, or did you have your sights set on MMA?
So, man, when I moved here, there was like the landscape for martial arts, right? Like many of the guys nowadays don't even know it, but like I remember opening a Black Belt magazine, and they had a section on there that they sold like ninja gear, you know, from the claws to climb walls through through like, you know, the throwing stars and you know, the landscape.
Hold on. There was no BJJ fanatics, and there was no like
no, man,
no MG Online and Mendez Brothers, and that didn't exist.
No, it was like people didn't even know what we did, you know, like it was like, you know, back when I first moved, you know, there was no tournaments in the US, you know what I mean? Like, I fought at the first Naga. I fought at the first Grapplers Quest, you know what I mean? Like, and I was like, man, I gotta go do these things because that's the only way that I'm gonna keep sharp so I could go back to Brazil and compete. Like my first
I remember watching you fight in super fights
my first year here was 97. I had to go back to compete at the nationals in Brazil and as a brown belt, and you know, there was no competition here in the United States. There was nothing like it. Then 98 ADCC came. So I stopped going to Brazil and I completely like abandoned competing in the gi, and I just started doing the ADCCs, you know, and then doing you know, super fights and grapplers quests and stuff over here in the US just to keep in shape, you know. And but yeah, there was nothing like that, man. Like we had no rash guards, man. Like our no gi class at Hanzo's, it was with gi pants and some cotton shirt. Like the first ADCC and even the first couple ADCCs, we went. And, you know, they would get these guys that sponsor you, like, hey, Ricardo, you know, here's like $5,000, here's $10,000, you're going to wear this sponsor shirt. I guess the sheiks all like betting against each other and picking teams, you know, like a fantasy ADCC. Yeah. Here's $10,000, wear this t-shirt. It was a cotton shirt. Like, it wasn't like these collar matched, really cool rash guards that, you know, the guys get nowadays with their names on it. You know what I mean? Like, it's super professional. And that's what we were like. We train either we take your shirt off or you train some beefy tee and gi pants. That's it. Right. You know? And even the rash guard and board shorts, like that comes from surfing, man. You know what I mean? Like 100% it comes from surfing, from how close the culture of surfing is in Rio. You know, guys started wearing, you know, board shorts and rash guards to train no gi. You know, that's even if you did no gi. You know, most people back in the day wouldn't even train without the gi.
Yeah, it was unheard of. I used to hate no gi, and now I love it. I like it way better than the gi. But so that's when you came, and you were you solely focused on jiu-jitsu at that point in 97, or did you have your sights on MMA? Did you always have your sights on fighting in MMA?
Man, to be honest, no. Like I never wanted to fight MMA. You know, like I always felt like it was. You know what I mean? Like, man, I'm gonna go punch this guy in the face and get in some fist fight with some dude that I never, you know, I don't have any hate for this guy. You know what I mean? Like back then, everything was like personal. You know, there was like kind of like no money involved in the sport at all. And even later on, you know, the UFC had just got taken out of the pay-per-view. You know what I mean? It had this aura of just barbarism and stuff. You know, like, and I never felt like that was like a cool thing for jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? Like, I've always felt like it served its purpose for, you know, for Horian and the guy to do the challenge matches, like to just showcase the true effectiveness of jiu-jitsu. But I always felt like there was more to jiu-jitsu than just its effectiveness in, you know, hand-to-hand combat, you know, like the stuff that we just kind of talked about before. And I would have loved even back then for things to start being seen that way. But, you know, first you have to create the revolution and then you create the evolution, you know. And no, I never felt like I was going to fight. And then in 2000, Ryan Gracie was fighting Sakuraba in Japan, and me, Ryan, and Luca Atala, who, you know, was the editor of Gracie magazine. We went early to Japan. We were for 2 weeks in Japan, got to train with Hickson, you know, and it was an incredible experience. And 5 days before the Pride fight was going to happen, one of the Brazilian guys got hurt and had to pull out. And Ryan goes like, man, why don't you jump in? And then, you know, what was it? What was I going to do?
What are you going to say to Hein,
right?
right?
Yeah. And Luke
He
was
wasn't
like, yeah,
saying,
man.
why don't you jump in? He was telling you to fucking jump in, right?
And then, you know, they like the promoter was like, man, I'm going to call Brazil. I'm going to get these guys. And then Luke was like, yeah, you know, Ricardo's here. You know, they just kind of like started like egging me on. And I was like, all right, I'll do it. No problem. If Hansel thinks I'm ready, I'll do it. And that's it. That was my first Pride fight.
So your first fight was in Pride?
My first fight was in Pride with like a 3 days notice. It was because I didn't have too much time to think about it.
You didn't have too much time to get too scared, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes it's the worst. Too much time, right? Like, man, if somebody broke in your house right now, you'd be fine. Fuck that dude up and roll out.
It's crazy.
But 8 weeks, right? 8 weeks to think about a dude.
Yeah.
Like he could be fat, rolls on his neck, and you're like, dude, man, look at his chest.
That monster grows in the closet. I mean, you'd have 20 fights, and you start thinking about that guy for 8, 12 weeks, and you know, towards the end, you know, if you're not careful, he just kind of takes over you, you know.
Yeah, it's a slippery balance that we'll talk about in a second. So, and then after that, like, you just what? You just like liked it? Like, I mean, obviously, you know. Like,
man, no, like I fought, and you know, like I made okay money. I think I made like 10 grand. You know what I mean? Like back then, I was like 20 years old, but I was making more than that fighting the ADCCs back then. You know what I mean? Like, so it wasn't like anything, and. Bro, it was 2 10-minute rounds with Akira Shoji, who was a really tough Japanese guy back then. You know, it wasn't something I was looking forward to doing again.
So you had no warm-up, right? Like, there's no warm-up. You didn't get like, man, everyone gets a tomato can their first fight.
No, man. No weight class, 2 10-minute rounds, you know, like it was crazy. And we go back to, this was like late 2000, right? So we come back to, we spent New Year's there. Hansel had some stuff. We spent New Year's there. I come back to the US, and again, going back to the escalator upwards and forward, you know, we're back training Hansel's back above the methadone clinic. And man, I'm hitting the bag a little bit. And next thing you know, this bald-headed guy walks in. I mean, back then he wasn't bald-headed, but this guy walks in, or these two guys walk in, and yeah, man, who's this guy? You know, I had these guys talking to him. I mean, those are the guys that just bought the UFC. They're here to try to, you know, they're trying to sign Hansel. And it was Dana and Lorenzo Fertitta, Dana White and Lorenzo Fertitta.
Uh-huh.
And they're over there trying to sign Hansel. But, you know, I think at the time Hansel wasn't looking forward to coming to the US. And Hansel goes to them, hey, man, listen, like I got a contract with Pride. Like I can't leave Pride, but I got these 2 kids. You should sign them to the UFC. And it was me and Matt Serra. And, you know, right then and there, Dana, you know, invited us. You know, we get the contract, we signed the contracts, and I think we started training for ADCC. I think later in March, I think we debuted. Me and Matt had our first fight in the UFC same night. Me, Matt, BJ Penn, a couple other guys had like our first fight in the same UFC as soon as Dana and Lorenzo bought it. It was pretty cool.
Oh, that's amazing. Who'd you fight?
I fought. Oh crap! The guy he was silver medal in the Olympics. I'm trying to remember the guy now, man. He was silver medal. Matt Lindland. Yeah, that was my second fight.
Yeah,
bro, he suplexed me so hard, man. Like, you know, back then I'm like, I'm just gonna do some jiu-jitsu, maybe hit some pads, and I'm ready to go. You know, I'm gonna go fight this Greco-Roman guy, and man, like, he took me down so easy. I never felt like takedowns like that before, you know. And, you know, he was in my guard. Like, I didn't take much damage. And they had just changed the rule with the up kicks. I ended up kicking him. And I got disqualified, like, later in the 3rd round. I was going to lose the decision. But I just remember being the first time that I felt, like, adversity, like, in a fight. I was like, man, like, I can't do what I want. You know, like, this guy is just 100. Even from jiu-jitsu competitions, like, this guy is just, like, manhandling me. You know, like, he wasn't, like, passing my guard or anything. I wasn't taking any hits. But, man, he just took me down whenever he wanted. And I just could move, you know, like I couldn't do what I wanted. And I had never experienced that in grappling before. So I think mentally, like, it really took a lot out of me in that fight, you know.
Let's talk about just that mental aspect of fighting, right? Like you touched on it earlier about the preparation for things, right? Like when you have a fight camp and how you have to be so sound with your mind because it can just run. You know, it can run in a million directions when you're getting ready for that fight. So how and then like in the fight, like you're talking about right now, things happen. right? Like, and if you don't have good experience in that cage or in that ring, whatever you're in, of how to deal with the shitty side of things going downhill and then recovering from that, it's not so much of a physical thing, right? It's the words and the things that are going on in your head that will now affect your physical performance. How did you learn how to deal with those things? Like, you know, because like that's the probably one of the biggest skills in and of itself.
Yeah, I think it's always a very delicate balance, you know, especially when you're talking about a fight camp, to fight in the UFC, you know, like it's such a fickle sport. And the landscape of the sport's a little different now, you know, like back then, it was more like martial arts versus martial arts. There was still like a little bit of a personal side of it, you know, but, you know, I think that it's, for a fight camp, you want to strike a balance between, you know, how much you push yourself, you know, in a fight camp, meaning that the type of training partners that you have, you know what I mean? So that you're experiencing enough of a challenge from these guys, but you're not, you know, getting destroyed every sparring session. And, you know, next thing you know, you're going into a fight like you used to getting destroyed. You know what I mean? I mean, probably many people would have different answers to this question, you know, but like for me, I always like to have guys that are pushing me, you know, I'm getting tired, I'm getting hit, I'm getting taken down, but also there's the other side of the coin also, like a balance between, you know, I'm also taking guys down, I'm also, you know, dropping guys when I hit them, and, you know, so you have enough confidence, but you've also experienced enough adversity. So when you go into the fight, you can focus on, you know, trying to do the things that you do well, but if things go wrong, you could come back from like a deficit in a fight. You know what I mean? Like, that's just kind of how I think.
That's such an important point right there. With you can't just, it's like children, right? Like it's like raising kids. You can't just give them adversity, right? Like you can't just be like, yo, here's the pool, go swim. Like what? No way, man. They're going to drown. Everybody 100%. Will. Right? You have to start it and ramp it up. And I think like what you're touching on there is such a huge problem that we're having with our children and raising them a little bit, is that like we give them no adversity, and then they turn 18 and we're like, okay, bye, later. Like, you're alive still. I did it. And now they can't do shit. Like, they have no clue of how to overcome anything. And then you're like, man, you fucking lazy piece of shit, is what society says. When I don't think it's the kids, right? It's the parents who didn't play that balance of like, okay, here you go, buddy, wash the dishes.
100%, man. That's why sports are so important. You know what I mean? Like, because sports, you know, again, going back to a video game, you know, if I was really good at video game and I was, you know, like an esports player, you know what I mean? Like, you go into a tournament, you know, like, and, you know, maybe you can win like this large amount of money, but if you lose, it's mostly just an emotional, you know, like an emotional tax in your body, you know, like when you lose in sports, man, like I see my kids ran cross country. Oh, my son collapsed trying to break the school record, like to the point that he couldn't walk. You know what I mean? Like, I see these kids' faces, like after like a really hard 5K, or, you know, he just ran the mile indoors at 4:48. Like, when that third lap comes around, it's like these kids' faces are melting. You know, it's so hard. And he's not even an elite runner in high school. He's you know, he's lost probably like 99 races and maybe one run race. You know?
Yeah.
And it's so freaking hard. Like, your whole body is in 100% pain. And I think that's great. You know, like, they're not doing that through jiu-jitsu. They're doing that through their running. But any sport that you play with your body and your mind, and there's an enormous amount of discomfort, but as soon as it's over, all you have to do is just go drink some water, go breathe, and you're going to be okay. Like, that teaches you so much, you know, like, and to commit to, like, all right, I am going to do the best that I possibly can and let the chips fall where they may. And if I lose, I'm going to cry, but I'll survive. And if I win, I'm going to celebrate, but then I got to go and I got to do it again. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make me a champion for the rest of my life. Like, you just have to, being a champion is something that you do every day, and each and every competition is not just one event thing. you know, because nobody remembers who was the world champion in 2017.
Man,
You know,
yes, I love that you're saying. This is the example I give to my students right there. I'm like, man, you guys think these arm bars are really important? You know, like sometimes when I'm talking after class, like, you think that arm bar is important? Like, look, I agree it's important. We have to do the moves correctly. It will enhance our jiu-jitsu. But you tell me who the champion was in 2016 of the middleweight division. Black belt.
Yeah, nobody knows.
Nobody fucking knows. So it's got to be more than about this goddamn arm bar.
Yeah, 100%. But you want to know who knows? The guy who won the guy who won the
Yeah.
He remembers that. He'll carry that for the rest of his life. And if he's smart, like, he will let that lead him into bigger things and more important things and you know, like, it's a lesson that you take. And the guy who was second, he'll remember it too.
Yeah, it's just that balance, right? You have to have that, like, you have to have that that balance of success and failure. And every failure builds you up and every success builds you up. Hopefully not too much. And hopefully your failures don't crush you too much, right? And it's like you were talking about, like, your fight camp. Like, you can't just get smashed because you're going to go 100%. Into that fight going, I don't do anything right.
Yeah. And the
right?
side is like you were talking about the kids. And you can't just, you know, experience only just beating up on your training partner. And you're not training with guys that are good enough. You know?
Right.
Like, you have to have both.
You have to have both, you know, and like, you know, I think sometimes in the world today we have such like this way or that way. A or Z, you know, and there's 26 letters in the alphabet. So if we have A and Z, there's 24 more letters in there that we can land on sometimes. And I think we need to land on those. Like, yeah, all of them are necessary, but we need to land on those letters a little bit, you know, like all of them.
100%, man. And then just going beyond that, you know, like we've been talking a lot about competition, you know, and you teach, man, but like the 95% of your students are not competitors, you know, and we have done an incredible job of making jiu-jitsu more inclusive, you know, but still so much of what happens in the jiu-jitsu community is dictated by what's happening in competition. You know what I mean? Like, I'll use like 3 guys that I'm very close that I feel like really, really comfortable with. You know what I mean? Like, all right, everyone loves John Danaher. He's an incredible instructor. And he's trained, you know, Gordon Ryan and Gary Tonon, right? 2 kids who, you know, I've watched them grow up and, you know, now I don't see them as much. But, bro, like, someone getting started or even anyone that's not competing at the highest level, if they try to mold their game after Gary Tonon, like, bro, it's not going to go very far, that molding. If you try to mold your game versus Gordon Ryan, like, it's not going to go very far anymore. Like, these guys are outliers. Like, besides, they are champions for a reason, and it's not because things have come easy for them, but you know, they do have incredible technique, but they're like once in a generation type of fighter. You know what I mean? Like, and perhaps Gordon once in a lifetime, just how good his results have been and what he's doing to some of the, you know, ADCC champions and all these other guys, you know? And let's go to John now. Like, many people don't know, but John has had, you know, like a near disability with his legs. You know what I mean? Like, so to pay attention to what he says, it has so much more weight technically for someone who's just getting started than perhaps maybe something that Gordon is showing, not because John knows more than them, but just because I feel like something that John does, most people could do. Something that Gary and Gordon do, bro, like, I don't even know if I could do what those kids do. I don't know if that makes sense.
I definitely can't do what Gary does. You know, I cannot do what Gary does. No way. It's crazy. Like, I can't move like that.
Yeah.
Gordon, I won't say that I can do it as well as him.
Yeah.
You know, but like his breakdown of his ADCC, I watched it, and I can do most of it. I can't invert like he inverts, like the tornado guard, right? Like that fucks with me at 40, right?
The thing about Gordon too is he has that harder like attribute that he gives you nothing. You can't, like, it's like you can't put both hooks on him. Like, it's you know, when was the last time you saw people put 2 hooks on him? I think I've seen it once. You can't gain, whereas Gary is more reckless.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But
Yes.
man, like the kids are so good. It's like, all right, I'm gonna go mold my game against the, it's like trying to mold your basketball game against Michael Jordan, bro. Like it's not
Yeah.
gonna work.
It's not going
You
to work.
know?
John, I've molded my game now currently. Like I literally just watch John's DVDs for the most part.
Yeah.
Because it's a very solid foundation. The foundations are very, very good. And I know that Gordon and Gary have those too, right? Like I'm not trying to say that
100%.
at all because they came up with John. John made them learn those basics. Yeah. And I think part of the problem is people are skipping. Like you have white belts and blue belts watching, the leg lock DVD. And yeah, it's cool. It's cool. It's great. It's amazing. Like it's amazing for me. Like what that does. But you have to have some foundation. Like what happens when you get in the shit?
Yeah, they need to be watching the side mount escapes instead of the side mount escape.
Yes. Yeah. The leg locks are way cooler, I know. But the first DVD that everyone needs to watch, if you're going to go watch one, is Pins and Escapes. Right? Because you need to be able to get out. And he makes the point in there, and it goes back to kind of like life a little bit. Like, man, remember when you were a white belt or a blue belt and you had a good arm bar from the closed guard? Right? Because you learned it very early and you loved it and maybe you finished a couple of people with it. But man, you stop doing it, right? Because you're like, fuck, man. So I got this good arm bar. But if I miss it, I'm fucked. Because when he passes my guard, then I don't know how to escape the side control. I flail. I get really tired escaping the side control. I don't want that to happen. And then boom, downhill because you have no foundation. You have no basics. Where like, man, once you have a foundation, once you can escape every position and like in life, once you can know how to deal with whatever's coming your way, you'll try anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
100%.
You'll try anything. Watch this.
100%.
I'm going to try this crazy move. I'm going to spin it, blah, blah, blah. Oh, man, fuck that. I fucked up. I'm mounted. Word, no problem. Here I go.
But then just going back to the culture of jiu-jitsu in general, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want my students to feel like I look at them any less if they can't move like Gordon and Gary.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like if you go to, like, you guys are in Colorado, I imagine there's a ton of skiing out there. I mean, just off the top of my head. And it's like, man, you don't go to the ski resort, whatever is the closest ski resort to where you live, and everyone is doing moves like Shaun White. You know, it's not the X Games. People are just going down the hill gingerly and hoping they don't die.
Man.
And I'm sure if you go to the slopes, you're gonna see guys killing it. But like everyone is having a good time. You know, like, and I feel like the culture in jiu-jitsu is like, man, like you need to be, now the kids like to say savage. You need to be like a badass, so that you could feel good about your jiu-jitsu, man. Just the fact that you're on the mat and you're getting better and you chose to come and train and you didn't sit at home watching Netflix, you know what I mean? Like it's already such a huge step, and then just allow that to grow and form your own game. Like who knows what your game is going to be like 5 years from now. Like don't try to be Gordon and Gary just yet. You know what I mean? Like just build your own game and take things from them, and then go take things from John and take things from Eliot, and, watch a couple of things here and there. But like, it's too much of a culture that you have to do, incredible, gymnast-like stuff so that you could be, appreciated, when it's not like that at all, man. Like, it's, I would love for our community to get like a little bit more into that,
Yeah, it's a great point, we have to combat the social media there a little bit, right? Like, because the social media a little bit, when you see what gets you, likes and all of that stuff on social media is the winning, and is the personas where, I mean, I see it, right? Like I put some old picture up of like me with winning something, and dude, like it like doubles the amount of likes I get on on something else, and it's crazy to me because one was very meaningful and one was literally just for show. Yeah. So, I think that's what you're kind of talking about there, is we have to move a little bit more towards the meaningful, and the things that happen on the mat every day are way more meaningful than, one person's ADCC.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
When so you have an autistic child, correct? Like your son's autistic. What was that like? How, like,
17 years old.
17 years old, like what is his autism like, and how have you like dealt with that? Because man, that's like when you picture, like when you're a young child, like, oh, I'm gonna have a kid someday. It's not what you're picturing, right? Like it threw
Yeah.
you a little curveball, right? So what was that like, you know, and dealing with that and learning that process, and really like, man, he's running track and like you're talking about, I see it on social media and doing great and being successful. How have you been able to do that so well?
Man, when my son was diagnosed, he was 5. When little Hansel, his name is Hansel Almeida. So when he was diagnosed, he was 5 years old. You know, we just started noticing that he wasn't developing his speech, and I think that probably like every parent, and forgive me if I get too much into the details of the autism side, because a lot of times there's a lot of autism happening out there and a lot of the parents don't know how to deal with it, and
Right.
not that I know, but at least I've been through it, And when I first started noticing there was something wrong with my son, like I was just like, man, like he'll grow out of it. You know what I mean? Like he's going to develop that speech, and he will start, making eye contact, or, he used to run out of the house naked. Like whenever any chance he had, he would just run down the street naked. I was like, man, what's going on with this kid? And he was diagnosed when he was 5 years old, and he was barely verbal, man. Like he could speak only a few words. And, he was going, I think that was the biggest decision that we did at the time. He was going to go into this school, and here in New Jersey, they have really great service. I'm not sure any other states, but they have really great service and really good support for the kids. But he was going to go into this school that was specifically for kids in the spectrum, and they had all these other kids with like Down syndrome, and it was like a disability school basically.
Okay.
And I was like, man, he's going to get great service here because everyone's a little bit like him. And, autism is a spectrum, like where a kid starts is generally like not where a kid ends, And then one of the ladies was like, I want you guys to go look at this school, because in my town at the time, they didn't have a placement for special services. So Hansel, we went and we looked at this in the next town over, and it was just like a regular school. It's like a regular elementary school that they had a really good program for kids in the spectrum. And I was like, man, like I don't want Hansel to be in a place where all the kids are just like him. Like I want him to be in a position where he's pushed. Like he might get bullied around a little bit, he might get made fun of a little bit, but as long as I know that the teachers are supporting him, that he's getting his occupational therapy, that he's getting his speech therapy, that he's, they're working with him to move him forward. Like I'm okay with him being, starting this race in last place, but he needs to be in a race. You know what I mean? Like, and that was probably like the best decision I've ever did for my son. There was a boy that used to be in class with him that, like, to this day, this boy only communicate through like a typepad, through like an iPad. He never developed like the speech. And Hansel, slowly but surely progressed. Like if you meet him now, like he's very quirky and he still struggles with socialization, and he'll ask like, what's your birthday? And he'll tell you like the day of the week that you were born. Like he has like crazy, incredible math skills. Like his memory is like out of this world. But man, he struggles, like, and he struggles now so much with being on the gray line, right? Because autism is a spectrum. He can do a lot of things. I mean, he just ran like a 4:48 mile, which is not an elite time by high school standards, bro. It's faster than probably anyone that's not a real runner.
Faster than me, man.
And he qualified for states for cross country. He was the first one from his school to do it in like 6-7 years. Like he's doing some incredible things athletically. He was the homecoming king, which speaks a lot more about the type of school that he's in and the community they built in his high school than it does about him.
Amazing.
In a way, I think, like they've been incredible, the type of support and love that he has at high school. But man, I've just, I've put him in jiu-jitsu. I believe jiu-jitsu is incredible. It's been incredible for both my kids. My daughter went into soccer and she flourished into soccer because she took the soccer practice like a jiu-jitsu practice. You know, like she paid attention. She listened when the coach talked. The coach is like, all right, we're going to do this. And she went ahead and did it and never questioned. Whereas a lot of the other little girls, they're looking at the sky and, you know what I mean? Like they don't have like no ability to process information and turn that information into something that's good. And I think a lot of that came from jiu-jitsu. And same thing with my son. You know, he decided that he wanted to run and he started running. And bro, like to be honest, like he wasn't involved in bowling before. He was in the math club before. So when he started running, I just kind of felt like I didn't know where to place it. You know, like he's been in so many things that people are like, all right, let me bring Hanzo in and let's let him take part, you know. And I went into one of his meets and this kid won one of the dual meets that we had here at his high school. I was like, man, like he must be doing really good. All right, maybe he's running with the JV kids, you know what I mean? Like I don't know what's going on. And it wasn't until I went on a treadmill with him and this kid ran at 11 miles an hour, like from the first minute to the last minute. And I was like, how is he doing that? Like, how is that even, I can't even run like 8 miles an hour for more than a couple minutes, you know?
No, that's a sprint. 11's a sprint for me, man.
Yeah.
I got maybe a minute.
He would turn that thing to 11 miles an hour and run for like 20, 30 minutes, like no problem. It's crazy, you know? And I was like, man, he's really running. And then I started to go to more of his meets. I started to spring track ended, and I started to read. I read a lot of books because I went to a meet, and you know this kid's coming around the turn, and I don't know what to say. And here I am, man. I've coached like world champions in jiu-jitsu. I've coached world champions in UFC, and I've always felt like I had information to share that was critical at the time. And here's my autistic son who kicked and scratched his way into a freaking track meet, and he won a track meet, and I don't know what I'm gonna tell him, you know. But I started reading everything, and I trained them. I trained him and his sister. She was just got into high school, and I trained them both during the summer. I scheduled, you know, their training with the miles they were supposed to do, the type of training they were supposed to do. He went from being the 5th fastest cross country the year before. He was the fastest by like a minute this year, and he qualified for states, you know, like, so just
amazing.
You know, again, just like the first thing I said, you know, it's like you have to put your kid in a race somehow, like people that are going to challenge him. And then you have to have someone in charge of doing the coaching so they could experience, you know, growth and, you know, feel like they're on a path to success, you know, like, so that was a great thing that we did, and he just kind of ran with it, you know, like this boy is like, bro, he runs like 70, 75. He'll probably, by February, when the peak of the season is, he'll be running 80 miles a week. He's a madman, you know, he's crazy.
That's amazing. And that's an amazing job by you, man. You know, like it's so hard because like you could have done so many things along the way there. Like so many choices where it's like, okay, he's autistic, throw him in the autistic school. And you'd still love him. Right? You'd still love him, but you wouldn't have anything with him. And now you have this thing with him that's so like, and you talking right there at the end about how like you learned track, right? You learned cross country, like about, yeah, but you're right. I have no clue what to say when someone's coming around the turn. That's like somebody in a fight. Like, and this is one of my biggest pet peeves. Someone's in a fight and they're like, and the coach is telling them, pass the guard. Yeah, well, no shit.
Yeah.
Right? Like, no kidding, pass the fucking guard. I'm in the guard. The only way I'm going to win this match is if I pass now. How about you tell me what to do? Yeah. Right? Like, 100%. How should I pass the guard? And like you taking that time with your kid to be like, to learn track. So you can be like, yo, Hanzo, you got to, I don't even know what terms are, but like you learned those things that you could like really help and not just be a cheerleader.
Yeah, 100%. I wanted to, you know, it's, you know, I feel like with kids, you know, just like when we teach the little kids, right? Like you kind of get down to their, you know, if they're real little. So if you just kind of get on your knees and you get eye level with them, like, you know what I mean? Like they feel more comfortable. It's not as intimidating. Like they get closer to you. So with my kids, again, you know, I try to inject strategically times that I get into their world, instead of them coming into my world, right? Because the Jiu-Jitsu Academy has always been my world. They come to Jiu-Jitsu, they love it, they do the practice. But man, like I feel that for my kids, being the kids of the professor, you know, like it's always put pressure on them. Whereas when they run, like there is no pressure. Like I'm just a crazy parent screaming on the sideline. I don't know what I'm doing. you know, like, and they're the ones running and suffering. Like, so it's on them. Like the power is on their hands. You know what I mean? Like, so me going to running, it has created a medium that I could interact with them, that it wasn't imposed by, you know, these 20 something years of jiu-jitsu that I've had. Like nobody's looking at me, like, you know, nobody's looking at them as, oh, you know, let me see what those kids are doing because they're the kids of the professor. You know what I mean? Like they're allowed to grow without the spotlight being on them. And that's been invaluable. So for all the parents, for all the professor dads out there, like it's very important that the kids train. I agree 100%. But like there's something the kids need to do that will allow you to enter their world. Like it doesn't matter what it is. It could be craft. It could be, you know, for people that are religious, it could be like going to church. Like I'm not also, you know, or it could be a book, passion for reading, or anything that your kid likes that he or she wants to do, like a chance for us to go into their world and then just let them be the experts. And we are just like they're clapping and supporting, you know, and being cheerleaders. But the fact that I had to coach them and then build like a very special relationship with them. You know, it's been so much fun.
But they had to develop that first on their own. Like you couldn't have been their running coach out of the gate, right?
Yeah,
like
and I'm not their, you know, I'm not necessarily their coach. You know what I mean? Like I try to like, hey, listen to your coach at school, but when you come home, you're gonna do what I tell you. You know what I mean?
It's so hard.
I've coached world champions and I know what training looks like, and what you guys are doing, like you need to do a little extra. That's all.
Yeah. It's so hard. It's, you know, like I've struggled. I think everyone struggles with that balance. Like right now I'm trying, like my kids are much younger than yours. I have a 10 and a 6-year-old. So like, you know, like jiu-jitsu, like they're still doing jiu-jitsu for sure. And they have to, but I'm not there. Like I've removed myself from their jiu-jitsu. Where if they got jiu-jitsu questions for me, then we do it like at home, or like if they want help before class, like we play and do all of that. But I am not their teacher because I don't want them having that pressure of like me bearing down on them in class. And then everyone's looking at like exactly what you said. Like, man, they go to a tournament, like, you know, and then all of a sudden there's like 30 more people around the mat. Because they're my kid or they're your kid. And you're like, yo, man, he's 8 years old. He does not need this pressure. Yeah. Right? Like, just let him do a fucking tournament. He's got nothing to do with me.
Yeah, my daughter did a tournament, man, and she did great. She lost both matches, but she was so coachable, and she fought 2 kids with way more experience, you know, in the kids' brackets. Like, you never know what you're going to do.
Yeah.
You know? And just happened that tournament, she fought 2 kids with way more experience than her. And she did great, and, you know, she was super coachable. But she didn't like the experience that when she got on the mats, like the entire, you know, population of the school was on the edge of the mat watching her, you know what I mean? Like she didn't like that. And running is giving her an outlet that doesn't involve that.
How could anybody like that, right? Because it's like they didn't even, it's like that ramp up thing. If the kid is really good and did something on their own to deserve that kind of attention of like everyone watching them, well, then maybe it's all right. You could see it, right? But all of a sudden, it's their first tournament. They've never done this before. And because of who their mom is or their dad is or their whoever, now the whole tournament is watching them. It's like, yo, I didn't sign up for this. I just like, why are you? I don't know you. And it's too much. It's too much. And them finding their own medium that you had to be the beginner at is, man, that's such a cool story, man. You know? And you took something that looked like a very huge problem, right, with your son's autism, you know, and you turned it into something amazing, like really, really amazing. That's a great story, man. Like, I think, God, if every parent could hear that, I think we'd all be better. I'm going to be a better parent, you know, because like, damn.
It's still happening, you know, it's a learning process. And, you know, I've been lucky with my kids. I feel, you know, like they've had so many choices that they've made right, that I feel lucky with them more than I feel like I've done like good parenting, you know. Like I think from the lessons we learned to jiu-jitsu, I learned not to get in the way too much, and then just kind of come in and like key moments, intervene in key moments, you know. And I've intervened at the wrong moments also, but it's fun to watch kids grow up, man. You know, it's a special thing. Which I feel privileged.
It's like the 10th time you've said that word, lucky. You know, and I think there's 2 messages that I really try to push on this podcast. And one of them is that you have to do hard shit. Like That's why it's called the gospel of fire, because my gospel is that you have to jump into fire and you have to see what comes out the other end, right? Like, I guarantee you it will be better. Like, I guarantee you when you jump in, when you go into the hard shit, what comes out will be better. And the third thing, and the second thing is that luck thing. Like, man, I've been so lucky in my life, and it sounds like you have too, that our sole job, in my opinion, is to go take some of that luck dust and sprinkle it on as many people as possible. Because you had nothing to do, you said it, you had nothing to do with when you were born, to who you were born, and that when you walked into Gracie Baja, there it was. Every idol that could ever be there was standing in that room. You just happened to, you just happened to walk down the fucking street and walk into a building, right? You could have walked into the shittiest jiu-jitsu school in the world, but you didn't, right?
Yeah, there were other schools, man.
Yeah, you walked into the best. You walked into the best school. Because why? It was in your neighborhood. Because you were born to two parents right there. Nothing you did, right? And man, that word luck. Whew.
Right place at the right time. Go
ahead.
Malcolm Gladwell talks about in the Outliers book, he has the whole thing with the hockey players in Canada, and he talks about a couple different examples of.
He talked about Bill Gates, right? Yeah. He talked about Bill Gates up in where he was, and where Bill literally the 3 years that Bill Gates was born and where he was born. If it was outside of that time period, there would have no Bill Gates.
Yeah, 100%. And that spread so much because, man, your lineage, Amal came to Brazil, man, Amal was with us in Brazil. I remember Amal getting hassled by the police, like driving his little beat up freaking Volkswagen Beetle, like a green car or some crap like that. I was like, man, what is this gringo doing? Like, the police are going to freaking turn him upside down. I remember being a teenager and walking by him and the police hassling him, man, on the street that we turned into the academy, and he's gone to Colorado, and look at where you guys are with all the schools out there, and you and Fee and all the boys. It's such a powerful thing.
Bro, I was coming to Colorado because I wanted to ski. And it was the #1 party school in the nation. And I could convince my mom that it was a decent math school. And I happened to be walking through a mall. And there was a mall teaching, and I'd done martial arts my whole life. And I just started this jiu-jitsu thing a little bit. And there he was, like, recruiting students to come to his school.
Yeah.
And now look at us. Like, I mean, sure, I worked really hard, and so did he. We've all worked. You have to work really hard. But the first thing is luck. Like, the very first thing why was he in Boulder, Colorado? What if some asshole jiu-jitsu teacher was in Boulder, Colorado, and that's where I signed up? So, all right, man, I really appreciate you doing this, Ricardo. Like, tell everyone where they can reach you on social media, like give some shout outs and tell everyone where they can connect with you.
Man, Ricardo Almeida, if you type Ricardo Almeida on Google, on social media, it's probably gonna show up a bunch of Almeidas because it's very common Brazilian last name. But the main ones are gonna show is me and the guy who builds suits in Brazil. But just add like BJJ next to it, and you're probably gonna find me. I'm always trying to share techniques and some of my views and the way I see the world. And if you guys have any questions or anything, I'm around for sure.
Man, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. I will send you all the links and stuff when the podcast comes out. And man, much appreciated. You were one of the ones that I was looking at, right? Like you were part of my North Star to like look up at and be like, okay, that's what I'm going to shoot at. So, man, things that people could never repay. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Thank you for the opportunity and good luck. And definitely looking forward to watching it. Thanks so much.
Sounds great, Ricardo. Thank you very much. Have a great day. All right, guys, go out there and find your power.